Flow state is that mystical way of being that every athlete or performer would love to tap into.
Paul, were there games where you really felt like you were in the flow state?
I wish there were more of them, but there were games, yes. I would say there was a game that when I was playing for SC against Arizona, and I, at the time, set the most yards passing of a Trojan quarterback. And it was just like, everything was just happening. It was just easy. And I was moving the pocket, which I wasn't known for moving in the pocket, but I was moving in the pocket effortlessly and finding guys, and they were just magically appearing. I'd flip them the ball. And then in the NFL, my first start against the Pittsburgh Steelers, same thing. Not thinking, not just playing. Just playing and throwing, and we won. So ironically, we won both games.
There you go. Well, of course. Yeah.
But it was just a fun way to operate.
Yeah, when I think of flow state, I think of like the Golden State Warriors and Steph Curry. And sometimes when he gets on a roll, he just goes down and flings it. And he takes shots from a distance that was unheard of in the NBA before.
Yeah.
You know, like you wouldn't go anywhere past the three-point line other than a foot or two. He'll shoot from almost from the logo, as they like to say, from half court, because he's just feeling it and lets it fly, and it's awesome. It's an awesome thing to behold.
Well, can we hear from the scientists now? I mean, so
I just wanted to get my Steph Curry plug in. That's all.
So what is it about flow state, and how do we get there?
It's a big question, and it's an open question in science. And science is just now beginning to investigate what is the nature of this flow state. So let's define some of what it feels like to be in a flow state. Right. It has to do with the sense of time shifts, right? You're no longer so aware of time. You're no longer so aware of your own self. That critic saying good job, bad job, that's faded away.
You mean the self-critic?
Yeah, the self-critic, right? That self-talk, that critic is kind of silent. You have also a feeling of great autonomy and effectiveness, where you're feeling like your skills and your skills are right at the level you're able to handle it. So there are so many different dimensions to flow, but we call it basically a state of consciousness in which we really feel like we're at our best, where we feel like everything is manageable. We're totally in the moment. We're completely absorbed in the challenge that we have, and we're feeling the sense of joy at times. So flow is not entirely always joyful, right? It can be involving moments of stress or things like that. That's part of the intricacy of flow, but it has to do with our ability to rise to a challenge. You can sort of have a flow state, maybe watching TV, I guess, if you're really engrossed in it. And flow state also can happen when we're feeling immensely challenged and under great duress. So it's a very complicated thing to capture. You can't necessarily go check the boxes, but everybody can go learn what are their big flow triggers that really help them get into it more regularly. Yeah, so it can become part of the routine, yeah.
If you can flip a switch, Glenn, that is the thing, the ultimate. Let's just flip that switch. You mentioned trigger. I have found I've snapped out of flow state.
Oh yeah.
What happened?
Quite easily.
What made you snap out of it? Throwing an interception?
Somebody said something. Oh. Just somebody said something.
Right.
And I was like,
it's like the no-hitter.
Yes,
Players don't want to come talk to the pitcher when he's throwing a no-hitter.
Or the kicker when he's got to kick the game-winning field goal. No one wants to talk to him. Just let him do his thing.
Leave him alone.
Because of that, I think they let him be in their place, and that something was said to me and snapped me out of it, and then I threw the pick.
And sometimes people can say the thing that snaps you into a flow state.
Okay, so what is that? I want to know.
Has that happened to you?
That's what we want to know.
Has that happened to you?
I don't recall it happening. I was just there. I don't know how it happened. I just got there.
There's a great example of, I think it was a 49ers Super Bowl run back in the 80s, 90s when they were so dominant. And I think it was something like, I'm butchering the people in this, by the way, but it was the example of like, I think it was Jerry Rice and Joe Montana.
Oh, yeah.
And they look up in the stands and they were like, oh my gosh, Robin Williams. And they're like, oh, cool. And that relaxed them. And they went on and had like this wonderful drive, right? So there are instances where
It took him out of the moment.
there's kind of there's the skill of going meta.
That was
Right.
Montana talking to Harris Barton,
There you go.
who was the offensive lineman for the Niners, and they were, I think it was against the Bengals, that iconic drive to win the Super Bowl, and it wasn't Williams, it was John Candy,
There it is. Yeah.
and he was there, and it was Montana just like, oh, that's cool, and he pointed out, and then everyone was like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
and then they were just.
And that just sort of relaxed them, you think? Is that
I
what
think
happens?
so.
Absolutely,
I
right?
think so.
There's a guy I'm gonna highlight, a good friend of mine. His name's Richard Mann. He's a former special boat service. So this is like Team 6 for the British SEALs, like a really elite guy. And he's developed this concept. We kind of came up with it, and he's run with it. It's called relaxed power.
Ooh.
And it's the idea. It has a lot to do with flow of being relaxed at our most powerful moments. I take it into the wood shop. So when we're talking about flow state, for me, my flow state is working in my workshop. It's building things, it's welding, cutting, grinding, painting, all those things. Like I can pretty much trigger flow state anytime I walk into my shop under the right circumstances. And
Does that mean you create wonderful things in there, or you're just at this place?
at times, yeah. I mean, that feedback loop of feeling like you're effective is really important. So it's hard to get into a flow state if you're constantly zapping yourself out of the moment to go, am I doing that right? Am I doing that right? It's more like, I kind of have some faith that what I'm doing is going to work. It's a very different thing. So the relaxed power comes in when you're cutting wood. If you're just doing a simple handsaw cross cut, right? It's really interesting. The harder you grip the saw, the less it cuts.
Right.
And so you learn that you actually are just pushing it forward and pulling it. You're not putting it down and you're not gripping it. And you'll get these beautiful straight cuts because you are affecting all this change just right there. I have a friend, his name's Etienne Garat, and he's a very famous violinist, one of the world's best violinists. Wow. And you watch him play, and he can like make your ears ring with a violin from like 30 feet away. Like the guy sends power through his violin. It's incredible. But you look at like his forearm, like if you were here, you would see like a tense forearm. He would have veins popping out of it like a rock climber. But no, his fingers are barely holding it. And he's just finding that resonance that's sending it out there. So I'm sure, when you're playing football, right, you're literally letting it flow, right? If you're gripping the ball too hard or you're not doing, all kinds of things, right?
Trying to like use your muscles to gun it, and that's not how the ball rips. It's sequencing and all of that allows the ball to fly. And hitting a golf ball, same thing. You have these guys that weigh 140 pounds, they can bomb it 330 yards.
Right.
And you go, how do they do that?
Yeah.
And they're not gripping it like this. In the 2022 U.S. Open, they interviewed Tom Watson, and the advice that Mike Tirico asked Tom Watson was, what advice would you give these players as they come to the first tee? These are the leaders. And he said, pay attention to your grip pressure was the number one thing.
Yeah.
Pay attention to your grip pressure.
It's actually really interesting when you notice, so things that inhibit flow, right? We talked about things that trigger flow, right? Which is the right balance of challenge and skill. It can't be too easy, can't be too hard. You've got to have a situation where you're able to sort of relax your feeling of time a little bit, and you're able to sort of like enjoy the process. Okay, so those are some of the kind of triggers that can help us deal with flow. Some of the inhibitors, of course, are those tensions, right? Those tension points of social comparison, right? What's that person going to think of what I'm doing? Those are probably the thoughts that get you out of there, right? It's those meta details that talk about the situation itself that don't have to do with performance, but more have to do with the effect of our performance, how we're going to look when we're doing these things. These things really inhibit flow. I really don't think if you're just trying to look cool and you're thinking everybody's going to love this, I don't think flow state's going to be an easy to happen as so much as just looking at a challenge to be undertaken.
Right.
You know, that's when you have flow state. For me, like snowboarding or something like that, like when I've stopped worrying about if it's going to look cool from the chairlift and I just try to find a perfect carve, that's when you start to do it, you know? And so it starts with breathing, of course, and being in the moment. You're not going to have a flow state if you're a million miles away, if you're thinking about your social media or something like that. It's just going to, I don't know how, I don't know why.
Isn't it more of a
these
meditative?
things are just going to do it, yeah.
Isn't it more of a meditative place, state of being where you're just in the moment? You're not thinking about outcomes.
Right, I was just
you're not
gonna say about
concerned about anything like that.
Yep.
Because the stresses and the pressures happen when, oh my God, okay, wow, I got to hit this
My
shot,
legacy's
or I've
on
got to
the
make this
line,
throw,
yeah.
or I got my leg, or what, all that. You start thinking, and you get in your head.
You talked about that in your book a little bit too, right?
Yeah.
That a lot of your pro career, talk about that a little bit.
Well, yeah, I think, the college career went famously well. Well, we had a lot of good guys on the team, so that was probably part of it. But I did play and perform well, and when I had my big moment in the NFL, it didn't go as well as I would have wanted. And I think I was trying too hard.
Yeah.
I was trying to. I was forcing, not
You're gripping the saw too much.
gripping the saw too much, holding on too tight. In fact, in 1983, there was a competition between Brian Sipe and I to be the starter. I ended the 82 season. Now, he was the NFL MVP in 1980, and then I took over the job for a moment in time in 82, and we got to the playoffs. We got beat by the Raiders in the playoffs, but in 83 was a competition in training camp. And the then offensive coordinator at the time said to me, I put that tape on of the Pittsburgh Steelers where I said I was in flow state. He said, yeah, you were just dropping back in that game, just throwing it. You weren't concerned about it. You're putting it on the money. You weren't thinking about it. And I was aiming the ball a little bit in training camp, trying not to make a mistake. And it didn't. And he got the starting job. I played a couple games, but he got the starting job in that game. So it's really
fear, right? I mean, was fear there? Was fear in there?
Fear of failure?
No, it wasn't really fear of failure. It was wanting it too badly, wanting something too much.
Interesting.
And
Grip pressure.
Give the kid right above your head there, Glenn, some credit. Michael, in my golf game, has always said, Dad, stop caring so much. You're trying too hard. Stop caring.
Yeah.
So I have a statement. It's in the letting go that we receive.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Same thing.
Yep.
Just let it go. Allow.
Yep.
Allow it to happen.
Yep.
Just be with it. Be one with it. Whatever you're doing.
Yeah. And I think noticing when you're starting to lift on that flow state and letting that happen. That
So cool.
We inhibit a lot of it. It was for me in the workshop, it's when I'm alternating between deciding the right way to go about things and then just going with whatever it is. And when you start to see incremental progress, so if you're thinking, I'm not sure I'm going to get this project done, and you go, why don't I just nibble at it and just start here and say, I haven't found the perfect solution, but I found one that seems to work. And then just letting yourself incrementally improve and make progress on something. So writing, right? A lot of people, I'm thinking of what people out there are thinking about, right? They're writing, they're communicating, they're doing work, they're working in offices or driving or whatever, and thinking about incremental improvement, incremental enjoyment of what you're doing, and also setting aside time where you're undistracted. Maybe this would be my last flow pro tip. I'm not sure, but would be really set aside the time. Set aside more time than you think you need, uninterrupted, turn that phone off. Throw a little music on. Music, it can be a really good flow trigger. And we're finding my friend Stephen Kotler and I have done this research on gratitude and flow. And we think we're investigating that feelings of gratitude can be a really important trigger for flow.
That's awesome. And just to sum it up, I think to what you just said, I always like to say life's a marathon, not a sprint. And we oftentimes try and get really good at something fast or accomplish something really quickly. But if we just give ourselves the time, and I love that approach, the incremental approach is probably, really great advice for
That's
people
where
to
the
follow.
flow is. That's where the flow is. That's the cool part, right? 'Cause
journey.
we all say, yeah, exactly. We all say, oh, follow the journey. It's about the process. Like, of course, right? The benefit of it is that the flow happens in those incremental moments, in those moments where things are coming together, and you're not necessarily making the biggest leaps and bounds you've ever done. But to get to those incremental flow states are absolutely instrumental.
Hey, Paul.
Yeah.
This is the part where we're supposed to tell people to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Okay, will you please do that then? I mean,
Yeah.
if you enjoy it,
Yeah.
please do.
And if you don't, do it anyways, because we need your help.
We do.
Also, we have a website called GameChangeNation.com. Just go there and subscribe and you'll get tons of free content.
And what we're really trying to do is create a community of people that love sports.
Yep.
And the great lessons that we learn from sports, but we want to hear from you.
We do. So we're going to have a bunch of social media pages from TikTok to Instagram to Twitter to Facebook. Instagram, I probably already said all of them. Please join them and tell us your stories. We'd love to hear from you. Oh, and we wrote a book.
Oh,
Forgot about that.
Forgot that.
The book is called Through the Tunnel. It's available on Amazon now. If you go straight down here to this link that you can see below us, you will be able to purchase it. We'd love it if you could do it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.